This section of the Yoga Vasistha is called the Behaviour of the Seeker, and it follows on from the first section, which was the section dealing with Dispassion, which was a long section dealing with Rama's despondency, which arose from the insight that there was nothing in the world which was of any real worth. Now in this section on the behaviour of the seeker, Vasistha has been having a go at laziness and talking about the virtues of self-effort or right action. And what he's really having a go at here is fatalism, defeatism. And I think one of the things which differentiates Rama's despondency from depression is that there's no sense of self-sympathy. There's none of the, oh, woe is me kind of thing, where he feels there's no self-sympathy involved. And I think people that are depressed do tend to think, why me? You know, why is it's such an awful world, and I'm such a sensitive person, and it's just not fair. And I think this is very much the attitude that Vasistha is coming down strongly against. We don't go in that direction. We don't give into fatalism. We don't go into any defeatism. We don't go into any kind of self-drama. Vasistha began the second day's discourse. As is the effort, so is the fruit, O Rama. This is the meaning of self-effort, and it's also known as fate. In brackets, the translators put the word divine. Later on he gives a little footnote. He says the word used in the text for fate is Daivam, which also means God. So here fate in the Hindu tradition is very much tied in with the will of God. When afflicted by suffering, people cry, alas, what tragedy, or alas, look at my fate, both of which mean the same thing. Yeah, this is quite an interesting avenue for exploration. In the Middle East, a lot of people have the habit of appending to any statement of intent the phrase Insha'allah, which means God willing. So they might say to you, I'll have your papers ready for you tomorrow, Insha'Allah. And if you believe in God, you think, well, that's quite good. You know, it's reminding us who's the boss here. It's nothing happens without God's will, which is all nice and good in a lot of ways. But you can't help getting the feeling that perhaps that person's not going to be making much of an effort, really. After all, it's all in God's hands. It's like saying, well, I'll do what I can, but it's going to be a miracle if you get your papers for tomorrow. Or I'm going to throw my little snowball of effort into the pits of hell, and you might have your papers tomorrow if it's God's will. Which leaves you feeling a little bit dissatisfied, and that this person isn't perhaps taking as much responsibility for it as they might. And also in Hinduism, you've got there's certain beliefs which can give rise to a very fatalistic outlook, which I'm sure Vasistha is aware of and is also fighting against. And so what he's saying is we have to take responsibility. In fact, we have to take total responsibility. I mean, what is the point in blaming anything on anybody else? We have to make the greatest effort here. I suppose that was what was captured earlier when he talked about grinding one's teeth. So let's see what he says. What is called fate or divine will is nothing other than the action or self-effort of the past. So he's putting it firmly in terms of past lives again. We are the sole, we are the sole agent who's responsible for our condition. Which is a difficult one to swallow, I have to admit. Personally, I don't see why we should take either attitude, why we should take any responsibility for our current situation. But on the other hand, we shouldn't give anybody else that responsibility for our current situation. It is as it is, and we get on with it. So I think Vasistha here is trying to counteract a tendency to blame other forces for our will. And he goes on to make this very important point. The present is infinitely more potent than the past. The present is infinitely more potent than the past. The present is actually, in a lot of ways, a fresh opportunity to begin again at every moment. We're only dictated to by the past to the extent that we want to be. Of course, we've got certain physical limitations and all the rest of it, but spiritually, in terms of what is going on within our being, we have total responsibility. They indeed are fools who are satisfied with the fruits of their past effort, which they regard as divine will or fate, and do not engage themselves in self-effort now. If you see that the present self-effort is sometimes thwarted by fate or divine will, you should understand that the present self-effort is weak. A weak and dull-witted man sees the hand of providence when he is confronted by a strong and powerful adversary and succumbs to him. I think the American attitude is probably quite good here, isn't it? I'm sure Vasistha would approve of the American attitude, which we sometimes call a can-do attitude. No matter how many times you get knocked down, you get up and you get on with it.